What's up guys, Richard here. Today we're going to make a short script, kind of like a utility script we can use within Flax. This is basically my first tutorial video I plan to do on something like this. And what we will be doing is making a smooth transition between two different cameras. So what you can do is you can have an object like this cube here. I've got the script called camera 1, camera 2. And what it does is it just smoothly translates between them. And at the moment I've just set it up so that if you press T, it performs that transition, and you can just do it as many times as you want. Now, this type of thing is something I use a lot in Unreal, and it basically allows me to swap between cameras to look at things, to show the player things, or to swap on to like an enemy's face as he attacks you. And in Unreal, it's something like a set view with blend or something like that. I've just called mine smooth camera transition, but we're going to make this, and there's basically two parts to it. So you've got the script, which you can use through C#, and then you've also got this visual script here, so that those who don't want to do scripting, they can basically copy my script and then they can just use it in the visual scripting interface. So that's what we're going to do now. So we're pretty much just going to go through this entire thing from beginning to end so you guys can actually see how Flax works. The reason being is because there is really not that many tutorials on this, and maybe this will help you. You'll notice small things along the way. Okay, so first up, what we're going to do is we're going to go in the source directory, into the game directory, and we're going to make our new script. And we're going to call this, let's call it smooth camera transition. Okay, so that's going to be our utility style script. Obviously it's compiling down here, so we'll just wait for that. And then we'll open it up in Visual Studio. Okay, so when it opens in Visual Studio, just expand this, go straight into Smooth Camera Transition. Now, all of this stuff in here, we're not going to need any of this because it's not going to be attached like any normal, I guess, class or any normal script would be. And we only really need the Flax one. So that's pretty much all we need from the start. Then what we need to do is we need two cameras that are going to be used. So we're going to have private camera, current camera. So that's our first one. And then we're going to need a second one, and this is going to be our target camera. Awesome. Okay, so that's the two cameras. Obviously then you need a transition time. So we're going to private float, transition, let's call this speed, or you could call it time, you can call it whatever. Okay, now we need to, how it's going to work is you're going to have your two cameras, and then when this activates, the first camera is going to actually move across to the second one. Then it's going to deactivate itself, activate the second, and then set the first one back to its original position. That way, you can just reuse that camera later on as many times or for whatever you want. So we need to record the current start position. We also need that for transitioning. So we're going to go private, and then we're going to go vector 3, and we're going to call this current camera start position. You'll notice I like to use camel casing. Everyone's got their own thing. So, and we also need a quaternion that's going to represent the current camera start rotation so that we can keep a track of both its position and rotation. We're going to then need to know if we're currently in the middle of a transition. So we're going to go is camera updating, and we're going to set that to false. Okay, and finally we're going to need to know is we're going to have another float, and we're going to know how much time has passed since the transition began, so we're going to call that time passed. And we'll probably just set that to 0. So there we have the variables that we're going to use. Okay, now how it's going to work is you're going to have a static function that's called, and that actually generates this smooth camera transition. The reason being is because when you're activating it from visual scripts, you can't just create a class like straight in there. It's like a real mess. You've got to use like a bunch of nodes, so it's easier just to have a static class that you can access. And you'll see this, how it works later. So let's create that. This needs to be public. It's going to be static, and it's going to return a smooth camera transition. Now we're going to, we need to give it a name, so we're going to call it spawn smooth camera transition. Okay, so obviously you're going to want to take in a camera, so we're going to call this the current camera, and then you want to take in a second one, which will be your target camera, and then we want to float, which is your transition speed, and we're going to set that to 1. Okay, cool. Now that we've got that, easy enough, we just need to do some basic checks, make sure the user actually put all that stuff in there. So we're going to go if the current camera not equal to null, okay, and then we're going to go or the target camera is, if the current camera is equal to null, or the target camera is equal to null. And what we're doing here is we're just making sure that if any of this is true, or the transition speed has been manually set to 0 for some reason, then we're just going to return null. So we're going to return nothing. We're not going to create anything. We're going to create basically an error. Otherwise, we're going to return a new smooth camera, and it's going to take in those things that we've just done. Now, and of course, the transition speed. Great. Now, obviously, we have to create a constructor that can take that stuff in. So let's go do that now. So we're going to go public because it's a constructor. We're going to go smooth, and then we're going to take in the arguments. And the arguments, as you can see up there, again, is the same type of thing. It's current camera, target, and smooth transition speed. And we'll put that straight into here. Okay, cool. Now that we've got that in there, we can actually start setting these internal private variables up here. So the private variables, we're going to go, we're going to go, well, almost did that wrong. We go, this current camera is equal to current camera. And we're going this just so that the system doesn't confuse about which one we're talking about because they both share the same name. This target camera is equal to target camera. And then we're going to go this dot transition speed is equal to transition speed. Boom. So that basically instantiates a camera which we can use in the visual scripting, and this is basically just your standard constructor. Great. Now we're going to get down to the heat of it, or the actual important part in it. So first we're going to create the start transition, because you need to call a start for this actual transition. So we're going to go public void start transition. Great. So quite easy. You'll call that from the script, and we're going to do obviously some quick little checks because it is possible that people instantiate this in ways that they shouldn't, and if that happens, then we just want to make sure that this can never accidentally start. And then we would just go transition speed is equal to 0, then just again return because it's a void. So we don't want it to do anything if they've called it in the way they shouldn't have. So we're going to go current camera start position is going to equal to the current camera's actual position, because this is only called once, this function. And then we're going to go current camera start rotation is equal to, now we need to make a quaternion because Flax stores things actually in matrices, so your rotation of an object is stored in matrices, so you need to change it from a matrix to a quaternion. So we're going to go grab the current camera's rotation, and there we go. Now we have that as a quaternion. And you might be wondering, why are we using quaternions? Well, for those who don't know what quaternions are, and we just obviously set the updating as true. Basically, a quaternion is a rotation that doesn't suffer from gimbal lock, and you want that if you've got cameras facing in completely random directions so that it can smooth rotate over. If you use matrices, there's a chance that when something rotates, it's going to hit this gimbal locking position and just be like, ugh, and just wig out, and you don't want that. Okay, so then we're going to disable, we're going to actually first enable the first camera, okay, which is your start camera, just in case the player for some reason disable it in another way. And then we're going to enable the target, we're going to disable the target camera because we don't want two cameras fighting for prominence within the scene. So there we go, that's the start. Now, obviously, we have to do the actual updating. This is where most of the actual meat of the project is going to happen. So we're going to go update void, and then we're going to call this update transition, just to keep some type of naming convention happening there. So the first thing is, if you're not, is camera updating. If it's not updating, because remember we say in the start, perform update. If you're not updating, don't do anything, just return out of this, because we don't want it running this function if it hasn't already been called to actually start. Now, we want to just set time passed is equal to 0, because you can call this function multiple times. So we're going to go time passed, and we're going to add the delta time on this. So this is going to be like our little timer that counts up, because remember, you can have it pass the transition speed. You can have this, maybe it takes 3 seconds to complete the complete smooth transition. So we need to be able to actually track that. And that's what this whole delta time thing is. So we're just grabbing the system's time between frames and adding that on top of this time passed. And then we're going to go if the time passed is bigger than the transition speed, which means that you've now passed more system time than you actually have allocated for this complete smooth transition to happen, then we're basically going to shut down the transition. So you do that first. So we're going to go, is camera updating? It's not updating anymore. We're going to turn that off. And we're going to go, then we're going to set the time passed back to 0. Even though we do it up here, realistically, you probably don't need one of these, but you know what, I'm just going to leave them in there. It's not going to really harm it. I'm going to go current camera dot is active, and we're saying we've now, the first camera's got all the way to the end, so we're going to disable this first camera, which means then we're going to go target camera dot is active, and that one's going to go true now because this one's gone to the end. Now this one activates, and then we're going to go current camera. Well, now we need to set its position, because it's over here, back to its start position, because you don't want to leave cameras where they shouldn't be. You want to put them back to where they originally came from. So then we just go grab that start position, and then we're going to go current camera dot rotation is equal to, and now we need to turn that quaternion back to a matrix, which is what I'm doing right here. So we're going to go rotation quaternion, and we're going to go current cameras start rotation. So now we've put that rotation back in the quaternion. So we start as a matrix, go to quaternion, do our whole smooth transition, then go back to a matrixy. Okay, and then obviously once we've done that, we're going to return out this update function. So this here is all assuming part way through, through our transition. You probably just saw some random foreign letters there. That's because I speak Esperanto. Okay, now we actually need to do the transition. This is where it gets mathematically a little bit more complex. So we're going to go current camera, and we're going to do its position first. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a vector 3, and we're going to call a smooth step. And a smooth step is basically like, hey, here's your start, here's your end. I want you to smoothly move between these two vectors. And a vector is just like the position in 3D space. I want you to smoothly move between them. So that means you need to give it a start, an end, and how much through that step it should be. So we're going to go current camera's start position, obviously, and then we're going to go target cameras dot position, because that's where we want to go to the end. And now we need to set up this whole smooth thing. So we're going to go 1 divided by, because it's a unit scalar, so it goes between 0 and 1. So 0 means you haven't started transition, 1 means you've completed the transition. And then we're going to divide that by the time speed. So we're going to break, did I call it time speed? What did I call it? I called it transition speed, my bad. Transition speed. So we're going to divide that by the transition speed, which means it's going to break up that 1 into, like, let's say 30 units if it's going to go over 30 seconds. And then we're going to times it by how much has actually passed. And which, in this case, if it was 30 seconds, then maybe 10 seconds has passed. So 10 seconds of that 1, basically. Now, that's for the position. You got to do the same thing, obviously, for the rotation. Now we go rotation is equal to matrix dot, there's a rotation. I think it was rotation. Let me just think. It's rotation quaternion, of course. Oh, by the way, I'm using smooth step as opposed to lerp, because lerping is like instant move, instant stop, and it's kind of jagged, while a smooth step is like it speeds up slow, and then goes to full speed and then slows down before it gets to the end. It creates a curve effect. So we're going to do rotation quaternion. It works in the same kind of way. You basically just make it quaternion back to a matrix. But I want to do the whole lerping thing. Now, unfortunately, there is no smooth step for quaternion, so we're going to have to use a lerp. So we're going to do the same thing. We've got a start, an end, and how much. So start is current camera start rotation. End is going to be the, what was it? It was the quaternion. So we need to grab the quaternion of the rotation matrix of the target camera's rotation. So we go target camera rotation. This is becoming quite, so you can see it's becoming a bit of a mess here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this onto separate lines. So let's go, this is, that first part there is for turning it back into a matrice. This part here is for creating the actual, what do you call it? It's like, it's the lerping between the two rotations. So we've got the start rotation happening here. This is the end rotation. And then obviously we need how much through are we? And it's the same type of thing. 1F divided by the transition speed. And then we times that by how much time has passed. Time passed. Okay. Oh, I'm accidentally deleting stuff. Okay, now let me put this back over here, and that should be all right. Now, when you run things for the first time, you're probably going to experience some type of fatal error because you did something wrong. So let's compile this and see anything in the output log. Doesn't appear to be any errors, so it looks like I've done that right. Okay, so what I need now is 2 cameras. So let's go grab a camera. So we're going to go under, I think it's visuals. Yes, camera A can be here. Let's grab camera A, and we're going to have him. You press 2 to rotate. So I'm just going to grab him, and I'm going to rotate him around. And, oh, I've actually got 2 cameras right next to each other. So I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to move him by pressing 1 and face him over this way, over towards the cube. So we've got our 2 cameras. I'm going to unactivate the second one. And the first one, I'll just leave as active, make sure there's no scripts on it. Good, press play. Yep, it's in the right position. So now, the cube, he's going to be the actual controller for these 2 smooth cameras. You could have a player, you could have another script, anything be the controller. But we need to be able to call this smooth camera transition, and he needs a script to do that. And this is where we're going to use a visual script. So we're going to go new visual script, and we're going to call this cubes smooth camera caller. I don't know. We'll just call it whatever. Parent's going to be the script. Great. Okay, so we're going to add that onto the add script. So he's got this. Now, we're going to open this bad boy up. Now, we need 3 parameters. So the first one is we need a smooth camera transition, which is what we just made. So I'm going to call this the smooth transition. And then we need a reference to camera 1 and camera 2 so that we can actually call this. So we're going to go camera. I'm going to call this camera 1 and camera, and we're going to call this camera 2. If it lets me double click. Camera 2. Okay, great. So we've got this happening here. Now, a quick note, I spoke with the devs about this. Currently, there is no way to hide parameters in the actual viewer over here. So if you've got a designer accessing the system, and I save this right now, you see how they can see camera 1, camera 2, and smooth transition. I actually don't want them to see smooth transition, and I don't want them to attempt to set it, but there is no way of hiding that. Probably in a later version, like 1.1 of Flax, that will be there. The designer said it's on the roadmap, so we just can't do that right now. Okay, now we're going to actually set this up, so let's expand it. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need some functions. What we're going to do is we're going to overwrite the onStart function. I accidentally just created a function. 1 second. We're going to override. Okay, so we're going to override the onStart, and we're also going to override the update. So we've got onUpdate. So we're going to need both of these functions. OnStart will create this smooth camera transition for us to use in the future, and onUpdate we'll just call it, and then we're going to call it by pressing the T. So what we need to do is then fill this smooth transition. So the way we do that is we actually have that variable that we created, which was like spawn smooth, or a function we created called spawn smooth camera transition. This is this static function right here. So we're going to call this. Obviously, we need to pop in these variables, camera 1 and then camera 2. Now, obviously, you would, come here. Yes, good. You would probably make the transition speed a variable as well. I'm just going to leave it as 1 because this is just for demo purposes. And then we need to actually set the smooth transition. So we're going to go set parameter, and the parameter we're going to set is the smooth transition, and we're just going to set it to this smooth camera transition that has been spawned. Great. Okay, now we need to do the onUpdate. So the way you would do that is you would grab this smooth transition, and remember we have a function that's called update. What did I call it? Let's have a look quickly. We called it update transition. So we're going to call that. So we're going to call update transition. There it is. Now, obviously, if we haven't actually started the transition, this update transition is going to do nothing. So we need a way of starting it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set up a basic, like, just key. So we're going to go get key and, not get key. What am I doing? We're going to get key, but did I get the right one? Get pick key, input, get key, keyboard. That's the one we want. I believe that's the one we want. We'll find out in a minute. So we're going to just go, let's give it a key. We'll go down and we'll grab what did I say? I said T, so we'll go with T. And then we're going to go, if that's true, then we're going to have an if statement, which means that, so if the T key is pressed, and that is true, then what we're going to do is we're going to call the start transition on the smooth camera. Start transition. Boom. And if I have not made a mistake, this should all work the first time. So let's go. We've got, oh wait, almost forgot. We need to specify cameras. Well, that's going to be a little bit difficult if they're both called camera. So let's call the first one camera 1. And then the second one we'll call camera 2. Okay, so now we grab the cube and we're going to specify those again. Where? Oh, I grabbed the wrong cube. Okay, so we're going to go camera. Did I? Okay, for some reason I did not name that properly. And then camera 2. Doesn't matter. It's still different. Okay, now we press play. And nothing's happening. Cool. Exactly as we wanted. Not. Let's find out what's going on. So if we have a look at the output log, we've got get key. Okay, so I've obviously used the wrong keys. So if we go into, where is it? Is it this one that I created? Yes. There's a key. Oh, because I'm calling an instance. Okay, let's go get key. This is really confusing sometimes. So we're going to go get key. Is it this one? Yes, this is the one I want. Okay, this can be a bit confusing sometimes because that's getting a key from a certain instance. I should have just noticed that straight away. Okay, let's just go set this quickly. But I'm hoping you guys are kind of learning how to like use Flax just through watching this video. Okay, so let's try that now. T. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, you see how I can look around? The player controller has taken over. Okay, so there's obviously a player in here. What do we got? Got that. This camera probably has a player script on it. So we've got scripts. No. Script. Yep, free camera script. Delete that. Okay, let's save. Have I got... Ah, I've got it under set to... Okay, yep, that's a mistake. Let's just double check that. So we've got if key is true, update. So updating's correct. There must have been something I did wrong in the actual start transition. Okay, so I just had some fun debugging. It was just a silly mistake that I basically made. I was setting time pass to 0 in every single update, which meant time was not actually passing. So I just commented that out. You can delete it, obviously. The only spot it should be reset back to time 0 was here. And it was quite funny because I actually pointed that out early in the tutorial where I was like, it shouldn't really matter if it's there. Yes, it does matter. But basically, the end effect is this. Boom. There you go. You've got your smooth transition. Now, you guys might have something like this, where if I go activate camera 2, so if I start with the wrong camera activated, then I'm going to transition from the other camera to this one. Now, so if you see like a sudden jump or it seems to be going in the wrong direction, just make sure you've got the right camera initially activated, or make sure in your cube, so if I get closer to this cube here with the script, you've got the right camera setup going here. So I'd go from camera 2 in this case to camera 1. Especially if your cameras are near each other, that might get a little bit confusing. But that's pretty much it. If you've liked this video, you want to understand like how something else in here works, just let me know. I'm basically building these tutorials in order to help myself learn Flax, to find how things basically function. But if there is something you're interested in, let me know. But I will primarily be focusing on things that are going to help me build my major project, which I'll start in about 2-3 weeks. Hopefully, no, maybe a bit more. 3 weeks, roughly around then. So I'll be starting that major project and I'll be building everything in Flax. And hopefully the system won't be too buggy and I won't come across any serious issues. But that's pretty much it. If you've liked this video, like it, share it around, sub to the channel. See you all in the next video.